Welcome, porters, to another lore summary video. I am Fragile Boson, your logistics support officer. This lore summary will cover everything the game wants you to know about Tar, Timefall, the Death Stranding event. I'm going to start combining all of these into kind of one series, and maybe sometimes one video like I'm doing this time, because they're minor topics that are really important, but probably too small to get their own videos. So this will cover the topics of Tar and Timefall and Death Stranding in Chapter 3, right up until the large weather event that takes place at the end of your delivery to South Knot City. So to avoid any spoilers, you should have completed the game up to that point. Let's go ahead and get started. We don't learn a lot more about the Tar in this chapter, other than we know that you can throw a nuclear warhead into the Tar and it will explode and not damage anything. When you take the chiral artist back to the junk dealer, she talks a little bit about the Tar Lake and says that it's bottomless. You can dispose bodies, junk, apparently nuclear bombs in it, and the Tar will just swallow it right up. Like, you know, there was a nuclear detonation that happened and the Tar just contained all of it. And that's really, except for seeing Tar in places, you know, around BTs, especially catchers, we see it coming out of Higgs's face. We also see it coming a little bit. It looks like there might be tar coming out of Fragile's nose, and that's not blood. After she shows Sam that she can jump, that's really all that we have for Tar in this episode. So let's go on and talk about the Death Stranding event. We have a little bit of information after this chapter is over about how the Death Stranding event actually took place from the perspective of a bystander. We're told that it all started with a series of explosions that were not really a series, but more like simultaneous explosions that happened worldwide. Immediately, global communications infrastructure was taken down, but later they salvaged it enough to figure out what had happened. They salvaged the communications enough to figure out what's going on here and what's happening, and then they realized this is a worldwide event and not just like a localized event. Everyone originally thought that the Death Stranding was a giant terrorist attack, but it didn't take long for them to realize that this was something else entirely. They noticed that the craters left behind in the void-out explosions were bizarre. There was no rubble, not even dust, which led scientists to rule out something like a meteor strike or a detonation from an explosive device like a nuclear warhead. There were trace amounts of neutron radiation, alpha rays, but they knew that it wasn't nukes. So there was something that was generating some kind of radioactive decay and, you know, alpha particles in the air, but they knew that it wasn't caused by nuclear warheads. They then just started to detect the first chiralium particles, but they didn't know what they were at the time. And the more they studied the craters, the more they realized that these were the results of what they called at the time annihilation events. And then the chiral clouds began to form, and all communications with the outside world went down essentially for good. So the United States was kind of sequestered at that point. Scientists were just starting to figure everything out right when everything happened with communications going out because of Timefall, and then they weren't able to communicate their findings, and so all investigation and research into the Death Stranding essentially stopped at that point in time. We also find out in this chapter that if antimatter existed unknown all around us before the Death Stranding, is it possible that BTs, beaches, the world of the dead, all of these things existed prior to the Death Stranding? I think that the answer to that is probably yes. We also find out that the Death Stranding may not have actually changed much, but that was, as Hartman puts it, the clap of thunder that brought all of these things to our attention, and it wasn't the change itself. So we have this understanding that now that the Death Stranding event has been, you know, years in the past, we've had all this time to think about it and react to it, that now the people of the world of Death Stranding are starting to think maybe this exists not because the Death Stranding created these things, but the Death Stranding was what happened to allow us to understand that all of this was already there from the beginning. So that's all we have, really. I talked a little bit about Timefall in our video on chiralium. So if you want more information on Timefall in Chapter 3, go see the video on chiralium. Otherwise, that's it. I have been your logistics support officer, Fragile Boson. Keep on keeping on, and remember, tomorrow is in your hands.